Hey everybody, so today you're going to learn about the nervous system and your vision. And what we want you to do is fill in that bubble chart as we go with notes. And then also on the back you can, or then you'll have to take a few notes a little later. So there's two major parts to your nervous system. The central nervous system, or abbreviated CNS, includes the brain and spinal cord. And so what that does is it integrates incoming sensory information, figures out what to do with it, analyzes the information, and then initiates an outgoing response. And in this part of your nervous system, there is no potential for regeneration. So if you get in an accident, if you hurt it, if you do drugs, all those nerve cells die and they don't reform. So here's your brain, right? So that's part of your central nervous system. And then here is your spinal cord, and you can see that the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral vertebrae you can see there. And then there's different nerves that come off of each space. So the peripheral nervous system is everything other than the central nervous system. So your central nervous system here is in yellow, and the blue is the peripheral nervous system. So it's in your periphery, it goes out. So you've got two major parts of the peripheral nervous system. So this would go on your bubble sheet. You have your nervous system, and then you have your central nervous system, which goes into the brain and spinal cord. And then you have your peripheral nervous system, which is going to go into your afferent and efferent. Okay. And the afferent is all of your sensory information. So all of the touch, smell, taste, all that stuff goes into your central, goes from your where you feel it or where you taste it to your brain, right? And that pathway is your afferent um, division. And then the efferent division is the motor division, and that's like causing a response. So afferent takes things up into your central nervous system, and efferent makes some kind of response and takes things to the muscles or whatever. So of the efferent division, you should have two bubbles underneath, and one is the somatic and one is the autonomic. So somatic is what we think of with when we're moving our muscles, right? So when I lift my arm up, that is caused by the somatic part of the nervous system. And then autonomic, I always think of as automatic because it's involuntary. We don't think about it. And that is what regulates your smooth muscle and your cardiac muscle and your glands. Remember, smooth muscle is going to be like your digestive system and your arteries and veins, and cardiac muscle is only found in your heart. So in the autonomic nervous system, you've got the sympathetic, and that's what speeds things up, preparing your body. I'm sure you've heard of fight or flight. So what it does is it speeds activities up. You breathe faster to get more oxygen. You start breaking down glucose in your muscles to get energy. You are getting ready to either fight, like if you're going to fight a mountain lion, or you're going to run away from that mountain lion. So sympathetic is going to speed things up so that you can be prepared to either fight or flight. Now the parasympathetic works opposite. And how that does is it's once you're away from the mountain lion, then your parasympathetic would kick in more, and that's going to slow things down. It's going to rest and digest. So when you eat a meal and you're resting and digesting, your parasympathetic is going more, and your sympathetic is going more when you're, under stress or that kind of stuff. So I want you to pause the video and go ahead and draw this picture of the neuron. Okay, so there's some things you should know is it has a nucleus just like every other cell. This is where the signal comes in, the dendrite. So draw an arrow going into the dendrite, and then it's going to go down the axon, and then the signal is going to leave through the axon terminal. And then it's covered with myelin sheath. And think of that as like if you have a wire and you cover it with rubber, then the signal is going to travel faster. And that's the purpose of this myelin sheath, is that it helps the signal travel faster. So in your brain, you've got two different types of matter. So you've got gray matter, which is mostly the cell body, right? And that's where you do all of your processing and thinking in those cells, those connections. And white matter is where you've got more axons, and that's how you transmit the signal. So that makes sense. This is your communication and thinking, and then this is your transmitting the signal. So when we dissect the brain, you'll see that there's gray matter more inside, and I'm sorry, on the outside, and then on the inside is white because that's where the signal is being transmitted. So you should already have a picture of a reflex arc, but if you don't, go ahead and draw this again. So the main thing to remember about reflex arcs is that the signal does not go up to the brain, and that's why it's so fast. So you have your sensory receptor, here's your afferent or sensory axon, it's going to go to your spinal cord. There's like what's called an interneuron, and then it's going to go back to your efferent system, right? And it's going to cause you to flex that muscle. All right, let's talk about how you see. So here's a picture of an eye, okay? And let's just orient ourselves. Here's the cornea. This is the outside of your eye. Light comes in here, okay? So light waves are bent first by the cornea, which is a fixed outer lens. So go ahead and just kind of jot these down in order, and you can pause the video if you need. So the first thing that happens is light goes in the cornea, and it's focused a little bit. And then light goes through the iris. So the iris is the pigmented part. So I have brown irises. And all that is a muscle. And that muscle is going to contract when it's really bright outside to regulate the size of the pupil. So if it's really bright, you want your pupil to be small. And if it's really dark, then you want your pupil to dilate. And then as soon as it goes through the pupil, which is the hole, it's going to focus on the lens, and that's going to focus an image on the retina. And the fovea centralis, remember, is where you've got the most cones, and that's the clearest part of your vision. The optic nerve, remember, is where the blind spot is if the light focuses right there. And the optic nerve, it takes the information to the brain to process it. So those are the first three steps. Oops, this should be four. So once the light gets to the retina, okay, then it's going to activate these photoreceptors. So this is part of your sensory system, and those are called rods and cones. So rods allow you to see light and dark, and cones allow you to see color. So if you are colorblind, then some of your cones, I'm sorry, are not working correctly. And remember, that's an X-linked recessive gene, and so males get that more often. So information from the optic nerve travels to what's called the optic chiasma, and we'll see that when we dissect the brain. And the nerve splits and distributes it from each eye to the brain, which is in the occipital lobe. Okay, so what we actually see is upside down, and then our brain flips the image. So here's a candle, right? It's going to focus, it's going to make that candle inverted, right? So we actually pick up the inverted, but then when we put it back into our brain, then our brain flips it back over. All right, so we'll do this picture of the eye in class, but the box things are the ones that you're going to want to know. Okay, so how well do you see? So this is called visual acuity, and it's recorded in two numbers, so 20/20. So the first number is the distance between the subject and the test chart. So we stand 20 feet away from that chart with the big E. The second number is the number of feet a person with normal vision would stand to clearly see. Okay, so if you are 20/20 or normal, if you're 2100, then what that means is a person can see objects at 20 feet that a person with normal vision can see at 100. Right, so that would be worse than normal vision. If you were 20/10, let's say, then a normal person would have to stand at 10 feet, and you would be able to see it at 20 feet. So some common vision problems that some of you may have is, so here's a, the light going through the cornea, and it focuses a little bit, and then it goes through the lens and focuses a lot. And if you have good vision, that focusing point should be right at the retina, okay, and especially on the fovea centralis. And astigmatism is where the cornea isn't spherical. And so that can cause issues with vision. It can also give you like night halos and stuff around lights. And then glaucoma is intraocular pressure. So intra means inside the eye. So the pressure, so this is the chamber that has a bunch of like fluid, jelly fluid. So if that gets too much pressure, then that's what glaucoma is. And what happens is this drains. And so if the drain is plugged, you get new liquid in there. And if the drain doesn't let it drain, then you get pressure and get glaucoma. So nearsightedness, um, where you where you can see near, you can't see far, is called myopia. And if you look at the shape of the of the eye, then the focus is before the retina, and that's what nearsightedness is. And you can get that fixed with LASIK. So um, this is the most common. And then hyperopia, farsightedness, means that you can see far, but close is blurred. And this is what happens when you get older and you need reading glasses. Your eye shape doesn't change, but your focusing of the lens um, focuses things too far behind your retina. And that's it. So make sure you, if you need to go back, write stuff down, draw these pictures so that you know what's going on with where the light focuses, and hope you learned something.